All right, guys, welcome back. We will pick up where we left off in our search tactics module by talking about clue awareness. Clue awareness is the hallmark of being a solid and well rounded ground searcher. And your ability to detect clues and to practice clue detection is very key to your development as a ground searcher. I want to start off by talking a little bit about how we search in the environment. And one of the ways that we really talk about this is by trying to describe where your eyes should move whenever you're searching. And we try to frame this by saying, think of it as you're in a cube and you're trying to look at different levels, different points within the cube, looking behind you and trying to envision that your responsibility is to look at all corners and all sides as you're moving through. You want to take a look at divide some of the easy ways to do this, or some of the simple ways to kind of wrap your mind around it are divide your scanning into zones, which I will get my magic pen here. Divide it into zones, so where you've got stuff that's above the shoulders, stuff at kind of like eye level or chest level. Then you have this stuff down here towards the bottom as well. You're thinking of it in terms of zones, and so I'm hitting low zone, mid zone, high zone. You're scanning to these different points. You're looking up, you're looking behind you, you're looking low and away. You're looking at these different points as well as looking forward, obviously, but backwards, up, down, all around. You're really trying to work that cube as you're moving through the environment and trying to hit all those different points as you're walking through. That's just an easy way to try to conceptualize where your eyes should be and what your eyes should be doing as you're purposely wandering through your search area. Okay. Scan the area behind you. It gives you a different perspective of the terrain, reveal clues or hidden objects. If nothing else, it'll help you find your way back. Okay. When we're just looking ahead, we are just looking, we're not searching. Okay. Let's talk about search theory for a moment, and we term it as clue-oriented search theory. And there's some hallmarks of clue awareness that we need to really talk about. And the first one, whenever we're searching, we're searching for both the clues and the lost subject. That's the idea behind clue-oriented search theory. There's always going to be more clues than subjects, always. Just in footprints alone, you're looking at about 3,000 clues over the course of a mile, okay? So 3,000 footprints, just one victim. So there's going to be many more clues than there are victims. So we have to train ourselves to look for the clues. Being clue conscious is extremely important as finding the lost subject, okay? The first thing we need to kind of level set on is the idea that people are clue generators. You cannot move on the face of this earth without leaving some sign of passage. A searcher may not be able to perceive those clues visually, but those clues do exist. Even if you're walking on blacktop, you are affecting that blacktop in a way that if we have the right sensors, we have the right capabilities, we can detect that. But you cannot move, you cannot do anything without leaving some sort of sign or clues. And this is why it's important for searchers to be track aware. Outside of the scent that you just naturally shed that a canine can detect, the second most common clue that does exist out there on any search that you're on is this right there. It's a track. It exists. It's the second most common clue that's out there. We have to be able to identify clues that size and in that present itself that way as we're moving through the environment. Okay, and people are clue generators. They're going to leave those. They're going to leave those behind. And usually the problem is not necessarily the lack of clues, but too often there's so many clues that are present that it's hard to find the one that we can relate to our lost subject. And that's the challenge that we typically face. Clues convey certain messages as well. There's at least 4 messages that clues can convey to a searcher that we've got to learn to read. The present location of the subject, which you would kind of think, well, if I knew what the present location of the subject is, I wouldn't need to look for them anymore. But the idea here is, well, I know that they're not here. I've got enough clues to say that they're not here. So, and I can say that we can move on from here, or we can try to determine next course of action. But the absence of clues can say that they're not here, or there may be a particular clue that is left behind that says what their intentions are, where they're going, what they're planning on doing. That can be inferred as a present location that a clue is telling us. The previous location of a clue or of a subject, where have they been? What have they been doing? Are we seeing some material transfer in a track? That indicates they've changed. Their walking patterns are different than we originally thought. There's some material that's being brought in and carried with them, unbeknownst to them, that they're leaving behind. Do we see something on the ground that says that they went to the gas station, got a pack of cigarettes, or just some things that can indicate where they've been. Destinations or intentions is another message. What are they planning on doing? What's going through their mind? What decisions have they made up to this point that have led them to their situation? And then finally, a total lack of clues can convey the message of we're not in the right area, or if we're not, maybe we are in the right area, but we're not the right type of sensor. They can pick up the kind of clues that are present. Okay. And different clues are going to require different sensors. As we discussed in the SAR resources, different resources are going to produce different results whenever we're detecting clues. And the capability of the resource is 100% dependent on the resource's experience and practice detecting clues. If you don't have a lot of experience and you don't practice a lot detecting clues, you're going to have a hard time detecting clues out there. So the more time you put in, the more dirt time, the time practicing, the more time with your canine, getting familiar with their cues. If you don't dedicate that time, you're going to have a much harder time reading that in the field. Okay, clue awareness is not something that can be learned in a classroom. It's something you have to get out and you have to practice on regularly. It should be a fundamental part of your team's training regimen. Okay, so let's talk about determining search quality. Whenever we return to the incident command post or we return back from an assignment, be prepared to discuss your probability of detection with the search manager. Expressing POD can be accomplished by various methods, but the most common methods are searcher estimation, which is what we talked about before. If there were 10 clues out there, the size of a playing card or smaller, how many would you have found? If there were 10 victims in your search area, how many of those would you have found? Again, we want to be clear on how we express that number, that probability of detection, because it can mean totally something different if we're talking about clue versus victim. So if we're talking, I'm looking out my window here at my neighborhood right now. So if I were to walk around the neighborhood, which is about a mile loop around the neighborhood here, it's about a mile loop, and the question that was posed to me was, well, how many victims would you have found along the route of travel? I would say I would feel pretty confident in that. I mean, I'll never say 100%, but I'll throw a 95% on that. I feel pretty good about that. It's open, it's wide. Even looking into some of the backyards, there's not a lot of unkept property. There's some fences up. There's not a whole lot of fences up. Yeah, that's not to say that they weren't wrapped around the corner on the other side of a house, but I would feel pretty good about walking through there and not seeing anything there on the street. And then if the question was posed to me again and say, well, how many clues would you have found? Well, I mean, there's a couple hundred houses in here. I'm sure I would find tons of clues, but my confidence level in finding the one clue that's related to my subject is probably pretty low. I don't know, 5%. That seems pretty reasonable, and it's not because clues are going to be hard to find. It's just going to be there's so many of them that relating that one back to the victim, that may be a challenge. That may be something that I may have a hard time doing. 5% may be awful generous, actually. So whenever we go through the search or estimation, really think about how you're expressing that value, okay? That's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be that factor checklist that I talked about earlier, where we have the list of factors that can influence POD, rate 1 to 10 on those, and average it out. How much did vegetation impact your ability for probability detection? How much impact did the weather or time of day, searcher experience, stuff like that? You can assign values of 1 to 10 on that, and then you average that out at the end, and that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of where that probability of detection sits. If someone comes back to the command post and they give me a figure like this, I'm probably going to look at them sideways a little bit, just because that's a really extremely high value. A good probability of detection for a victim in a wilderness environment, and we'll say it's moderately, the vegetation's moderate. For a victim, I don't know, I would think this right here, 40% will be a pretty high number. If you got up to 50%, that's a very high number to me, 50%. A clue, I don't know, 5 to 10% in a wilderness environment. If you're talking, 50 to 100 acres searched over 4 to 6 hours by a team of five, that's a lot of confidence right there that was searched pretty thoroughly, in my opinion. 40% chance that you found something in that short a time frame in that large of an area with that small of a team. That's a lot. Okay, so make sure that whenever you're expressing those values, be honest with yourself in those values. Those values mean something to me as a search planner. All right. So let's clear this and let's continue to talk about determining search quality. Whenever you're returning to your command post, be prepared to discuss that. And whenever we look at the equation again of probability of area times probability of detection equals probability of success, this is our baseline equation. Probability of area is not a controllable variable. Okay, that's something they're either in the area or they're not. We have an idea. There's a couple different ways that we can arrive at probability of area. We can do it through lost person behavior statistics. We can do it by some deductive reasoning or some consensus analysis. But generally speaking, they're either in the area or they're not. Okay, so this is the thing that really we drive at from a search planning perspective, because this one is really more so on the operator. Okay. This more so, oh, hang on. This is more on planning, okay? This is more on planning, okay? And again, we should convey that in the two different ways, the clue POD and the victim POD, and then we're driving towards this. Do we need to search this area again, all right? So these numbers mean something to us in the command post. Don't overestimate them. Don't give even if you, obviously I've seen people, they give a high number because they don't want to make it feel like that they didn't contribute or they didn't do their job well. That's not helpful. That's not helpful to me. I need to know the real number so that way I can figure out what to do next. Okay. All right. How to improve your search quality. This is very simple. You need to practice it. Practicing clue searching regularly in a variety of environments reflecting your area of service. It's paramount. It needs to be done on a fairly routine basis. I'll talk to it at some point how I would structure the training role within your teams. But your ground team leader should routinely schedule practices in this area, clue practices in these two areas. We need to be proficient at route searching and area searching. Whenever we talk about a route search, place a set number of clues that are between large, small, depending on how granular we want to get on an easy route of travel, and just walk through at normal speed. See how many you find, how many your team finds. Don't let them know how many there are to be found. I've run it before where it's been a blind area where I've hidden no clues just to see if what number I get back. You want to throw a control in there every now and then, but do this regularly. The same thing with an area search. Make yourself a search area, put a set number of clues in there, have your teams practice their purposeful wandering through the area and count what they find. I've done this before, and I've done this And it's been sometimes I've been very impressed on how well the teams can find very small clues in that controlled environment, just because they know there's clues there to be found, and you should always operate under the assumption that there is a clue there to be found. But these are good, easy ways of practice, easy to set up, and they're really impactful for your team. So I highly recommend this needs to be part of your regular practice at the ground team level. We'll touch on clue handling, and then we'll wrap this module up here. So whenever we talk about clue handling, those specific instructions on how to handle clues should always be delivered during the briefing. However, there are some guidelines that can generally always be followed. Always treat clues as if they're evidence, and always treat the area around a clue as a potential crime scene. It not saying it is or it isn't, but if you treat it that way, you reduce the risk of that area being contaminated if it does become a crime scene or that does become evidence. Don't touch or remove anything until someone that's trained in evidence collection has come out there and done what they need to do. If you do come across a clue, immediately record your position, where you are, and communicate what you found back to the command post. Be ready to describe it, where it was found, and what condition it's in, and even what position it's in. How's it laying? It's a good exercise that was shared with me one time. It's a good way to practice this. Is you take two groups of people and put them in two separate rooms. One room they have a Lego structure already built, and in the other room is a group of people that have just the pieces to the Lego structure. They have the same number of pieces as the structure, and the team that has the completed structure has to use a radio or a phone to communicate to the other team how to build the other structure. Okay, so be prepared to communicate in that way once you've found something. The best thing to do is honestly slow down for just a minute. Make sure you have all the information that you need before you reach out to the command post, but you should do that fairly quickly, so that way we can figure out what we need to do with it from a planning perspective. But I would prefer you take your time, get the information together, so that way I don't have to sit there and ask for it, and you may not be ready to produce the information that I need. Preserve the scene and then control access to that clue. Be able to describe how you approached into and out of the area where the clue is, and don't leave anything that belongs to you at the scene. Okay. Be mindful of your actions and protect yourself. Consider drawing a sketch of the clue and its location as opposed to taking a photo. There's a couple different reasons why. The primary one here would be more so to protect you. The outcome of the search may result in criminal activity on someone's part, and your phone could then be considered evidence because you took a picture of it. I've seen teams that use disposable cameras. I would even hesitate, because I hear this one brought up a lot. If you use an application, like a mobile application that sends your photo to a cloud environment, it may do that, and the technology may make it where it never saves a copy on your phone. However, I would exercise caution, as some gung ho attorney or law enforcement official. They may say, well, that's fine, we're going to collect your phone as evidence anyway. It's easier to go ahead and protect yourself, and just try to stay away from that as you can. I've always entertained doing like a FaceTime if I find a clue, so that way it's more of a phone call than it is actually logging anything on my phone. There's no recording on my phone. And then also sketching the clue is another one. So be mindful what you take pictures of on a mission, just so that way you kind of protect yourself there a little bit. And that is going to wrap us up, guys, on search tactics. This is one of my more favorite modules to talk through, and I hope you guys have enjoyed the content. So thank you for watching. Much appreciated.